Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi-Yo Silver! A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-Yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger saw what he was waiting for. A crude raft was making its way down the creek.
You can't get away, Hanley.
The Lone Ranger and the tough Joe Hanley exchanged blow for blow there on the rocky beach. Hanley was a hard man and a tough fighter, but he soon found he had taken on more than he could handle.
That's for Dan, and this is for good measure. Oh! He's the Lone Ranger?
Yes, he sure is. I'm glad to have the Lone Ranger helping me instead of against me every time.
I'll Silver! Hooray!
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the amicable young David Cohen.
I disagree with young, but I'll take amicable.
And we are going to explore the medium of radio today on Everything Old is New Again. I want to explore the statement or the presentation that radio might be underutilized at this point in time. At this point in time, we have wonderful shows, and I'm not putting them down. We've got music, sports, we've got politics and news, and, maybe some financial stuff and some medical stuff here and there. And basically, that's the radio.
Right.
And I think, and those are great shows, but I think there's more that can be offered by radio.
Like what we have.
Well, I would suggest that we are trying to present something a little different. I don't know how expert we are at it. I don't know how much, we're changing anything. But it's my idea and Dave's idea that we can do a little bit more with radio. That was a clip from, of course, the Lone Ranger in 1933. And that's when radio basically was the internet and the television of the day.
Right.
It was the source of all things, all information, other than a newspaper.
Exactly.
People didn't get on the phone and talk left and right. At nighttime, a telephone call was a special thing.
That's what we've read. Right, we're not.
Well,
we didn't live in those times.
I've been a fan of radio my whole life,
right.
So I have explored this with my grandparents before they passed away.
Yeah.
Certainly explored it with my parents. The Lone Ranger, believe it or not, is one of my mother's favorite shows. It was on for 20-something years, and she listened to it as a girl, and she also experienced the significant seriousness of radio as being on the spot in different events such as this.
The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It's burst into flames. Get it started. It's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my. Get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between it. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. It's 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. It's smoke and it's flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground. Not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the furniture speeding around it. I told you. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen.
That was, of course, the Hindenburg. That was Herbert Morrison, if you remember the name of, not a well-known name, but a gentleman that was in 1937 at Lakehurst, New Jersey, watching this dirigible, this Zeppelin, if you will, come in from Germany to land at the, I guess, what would they call it, a depot or airport or something in 1937.
And so, he was just broadcasting the landing of the Zeppelin, right? And in retrospect, look, the humanity, it's become sort of a gag line over the years. But when you listen to the actual clip, I mean, you can hear that. You don't have to see it, right? You can hear the emotion and the tragedy that happened. You can visualize it.
And the word picture that he's painting there, think about the skill of just going ahead, not planning that at all,
right, and
coming out with that, and it just shows that the TV reporters were everywhere. It wasn't like you just stay in a studio and that's it. I'm saying radio.
Right.
Well, they were everywhere. They were out with their microphones and they were doing things and visiting places and getting involved in part of people's lives. That's why the War of the Worlds works so well.
What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Oh, the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, The gas tanks of the automobiles spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
And you can see how that was a radio play.
It was a fabrication.
Right, in 1938 by Orson Welles and the Mercury Players, which they did a weekly show of different, episodes, an hour show of different live dramas. And he did like Les Mis and different things like that, all kinds of stories. But here they created for October 30th, and the next day was, of course, Halloween, a radio play where, you don't know the story, where H.G. Wells' story where Martians come to Earth. And they played it. If you listen to the influence of Herbert Morrison on the actor that played the War of the Worlds.
The actual tragedy, right?
Yeah,
they used that.
Now, we look at it, we laugh at this in some ways. How could people think this was real and all of that? And
because they did. Just to give a little more background, that there were people who were listening to this radio broadcast and were literally panicking, running out of their houses, looking for protection or cover from the invading aliens.
Right, because it was played back and forth, but if you listen to this whole thing, it's everywhere on the internet, they played as if it was happening in real time.
Right.
So and now you could see why Orson Welles had to apologize for that.
Came, of course, as a great shock to us that the old H.G. Wells fantasy, the classic original for so many adventure stories, romances, and even comic strips, should have so profound an effect upon radio listeners. The invasion by mythical monsters from the planet Mars seemed to us to be clearly in the realm of the fairy tale. Deeply regretful that this is not so.
Now, of course, Orson Welles did Citizen Kane and a number of other masterpieces. The guy was a genius.
Right. He knew what he was doing, too. I mean, he apologized, but that he wanted to do that. I mean, the only thing you can compare that to today, and it's kind of hard to fathom, but literally, if every internet page, the TV, the radio, everything that you could possibly pull up on a screen somewhere was saying the same thing about an alien invasion, how you would feel, right? And that's exactly what happened when the radio was the only source of media outlet back then.
Right. People certainly could have changed the channel, but there was no remote control changing the channel. It wasn't in your what would you say, your way of operation. You would sit and watch or listen to the radio, watching it, looking at it, or doing something else, but you didn't just, let me go change the channel.
Right.
It wasn't in
you stuck to whatever was on.
Right. Not all of it was serious. Bob and Ray, group of my favorite comedians, go back to 1946, and they've had some fun with the radio, too.
See what we mean when we say that America must face up to arithmetic and particularly fractions.
Lovely day we're having.
Just a minute, ma'am. This canned corn is 3 for $29. You've only got 2 cans here. Do you want to go back and get the other one?
I only want the 2.
I know, but it's 3 for $29.
Is that so? I know it says on one can 3 strike 29.
That's right.
What that means?
3 for $29.
But I don't want 3.
You don't need. I see, but that doesn't help me any.
So to buy 3 would be almost a lifetime.
I know, but if you buy 2, you see, it comes out to 9 2/3 cents a can, and we don't have fractions on the machine here.
This subtle humor. That skit actually is about 2.5 minutes long, and to really get the sense of their comedy, you've got to listen to the whole skit. It really builds and adds to the ambiance with the word picture they paint. But to get a little sense that back in the day, as Dave has wonderfully described, that radio was the form. I'm going to say this: it was the form of all news, as we've talked about. The radio reporters were out and about in the field all over, as well as it was the source of entertainment, original entertainment, like Bob and Ray, like the War of the Worlds, like the Lone Ranger. It was something that I think has been lost, and it shouldn't be lost. There is room for more for us to do on the radio, and I think listening to the Lone Ranger theme is kind of gives us peace of mind here. There we go. And, the Lone Ranger theme is so well known still. How many years later? 1933, was it 90 years later, almost 85 years later, because that show was on the air something like 25 years. Then it was a TV show. Then it was a number of movies, most recently the failure.
A really bad one, right.
Yeah. Although, if you watch that movie and just watch the last scene where they play that song and all the antics that go on, that was very well produced and timed with the music. It's just something something about that song that gets you going. And if you listen to that radio play, any of the Lone Ranger radio plays, you hear the song at the end where he's battling someone, he's fighting someone, he's shooting a shootout with someone, and that song is playing. That was the key to the whole show. It was funny. You would just wait for that song. I mean, that was basically the episode. All the rest of it was an excuse to wait for the Lone Ranger to come along and save the day.
That's funny. That's funny.
But it just shows an example of live entertainment, or even if it's not live, presented entertainment that is
a live action
original
play,
live action
right.
type of play on the radio. It's something that can be done now if we feel like it. But radio is different now. But you've got podcasts that you can listen to. You can tune in. I see people walking up and down the streets all over the place with earphones on, and you don't have to have the radio playing live right then and there. You can download a show if you feel like it.
Right, exactly.
And listen to it right then and there. So I don't know if Dave, you was as big a fan of radio as I was growing up. What were you mostly listening to? NBC radio, listening to music, or were you involved in some talk show stuff?
It was mostly music. Right. That's what I was into as a teen until. Wait,
did you hear this?
Who's
song?
coming?
Here he is!
Wow!
Hooray! We'll be right back.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
In those days, the radio was constantly playing at our house. My mother, for instance, never missed her favorite show, Breakfast with Irene and Roger. My own personal favorite show was something called The Masked Avenger.
Hey, can I have 15 cents for the new Masked Avenger ring?
What, am I made of money?
Pay more attention to your schoolwork and less to the radio.
You always listen to the radio.
It's different. Our lives are ruined already. You still have a chance to grow up and be somebody.
Those radio days, right?
Yes, radio days from Woody Allen. He explored the same topic we're exploring, and he did it in a beautiful way, through the eyes of a child. And he made up these fictitious shows, but they represented the real shows. And one of those shows was, let's look at this. Maybe that's a great idea that Woody Allen did. Let's try to look at, again, with the power of radio. Let's wave the wand and try to see what it would be like to be listening to or growing up in the 30s and 40s and listen to what we would have been doing for entertainment back in the day. We got home from school. There was a 15-minute show that was on that was the hit of kids all over the place, and it was Little Orphan Annie. Listen to a little piece of how that went.
Shucks, Annie, come on. I want to see this man.
Jumping grasshopper, so do I. I'll bet this Mr. Strong, this big engineer, is going to be swell. Come on, Caesar, let's meet him.
Well, Annie and Joe seem to have made some mighty nice new friends today, didn't they? For all you new 1936 members of Annie's Secret Society. So get your pencils and paper ready for an important secret message in Annie's 1936 Mystery Radio Code. Are you all set? And here we go with the secret message itself. First word, 19, 5, 21, 15... That's all, and that was another secret message in Annie's Mystery Radio Code. And all you 1936 members who have your super decoder pins and secret books can figure it out right away.
That was an actual interaction between a kid, listening to this at home, and your radio star and the announcer of the star presenting you with a secret code your parents would never know because you had a ring that you had to, interpret and turn to a certain knob and interpret what letters those numbers represented.
Wasn't that in the radio days, though, where he had a decoder ring and it spelled out, drink more Ovaltine?
Yes, actually, it was Christmas Story with Gene Shepard.
Oh, Christmas Story.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
right,
which is great. I know. If you've seen that movie, it explains this beautifully, and so much fun with it. That's what life was. It was the internet of the day. I'm not saying that the radio today is going to replace the internet today. All I'm saying is it could be a supplement to our entertainment dollar, so to speak, or time.
Right.
There's more that can be done with entertainment. And again, if we were back in the day, let's say 1930s, 1940s, we might sit back and listen to this compilation of shows. Let's listen to what we would be listening to.
You use jujitsu on that one, huh? Yes, sir. Quick, pick up that gun. We'll leave this confession aside, Fisher. What gets me is what happened to these guys. Well, what do you think, Doyle? The Green Hornet, huh? Hey, there ain't no writing on this page. It's blank. Maybe you need glasses, Doyle. I tell you, it's blank. Look. All there is this here Green Hornet seal in the corner. Doyle, I get it. It's disappearing ink. Disappearing ink? Yeah. Try and trace that. Man, that Green Hornet thinks of everything. To see the Clarion try and beat this yarn.
You know the guy's names on the baseball team? Well, go ahead. Who's on first?
Yes.
I mean the guy's name.
Who?
The guy playing first.
Who?
The guy playing first base.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
What are you asking me for? I don't know.
Now, wait a minute.
I'm asking you who's on first.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows.
The Shadow, mysterious character who aids the forces of law and order, is in reality Lamont Cranston, wealthy young man about town. As the Shadow, Cranston is gifted with hypnotic power to cloud men's minds so that they cannot see him. Today's story, The Shadow Challenge.
What was that?
I'm sorry to interrupt your work, Professor Rice.
Who is speaking? I see no one.
I am called the Shadow.
The Shadow?
What do you think? We've got a nice evening of entertainment.
I do. I like the sound effect of changing the radio station. That's pretty cool.
That was actually me changed. We were back in 1937. I was.
Oh, right. Yes, we were there. Sorry. I mean to break the illusion.
Come on. But that was the Green Hornet, who, by the way, is the great nephew of the Lone Ranger. If you.
What?
Yes. The creators of the Green Hornet, first of all, let me back up. The creators of the Lone Ranger in 1933 created the Lone Ranger, and of course the serial ran. Then they said, let's have another character. They updated the type of character that there is, and instead of a horse, it has they have the Black Beauty of the car. Still has the mask, just like the Lone Ranger, and he is known to be the great nephew of the Lone Ranger. That came
really?
Out. Yes.
I had no idea. You know, in the movie, they didn't mention anything about that.
Sometimes history can be fun. Let's spend another night together. This would be a different night. Saturday night. Listen to what we would listen to then.
Are you eating a tomato, or is that your nose? Is it true, Mr. Fields, that when you stood on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, 43 cars waited for your nose to change to green?
No way, you woodpecker's lunch.
Bob Hope. Yes, sir, here I am in beautiful Palm Springs. This is where the California Chamber of Commerce takes pictures of the sun to put on Los Angeles greeting cards. And we passed one farm, and on account of the egg shortage, there were 3 government officials standing around a chicken. They were waving an American flag at it and yelling, "Strain a little, Matilda." Some of the Hollywood stylists still come down and walk around the streets in shorts. I wouldn't say these soldiers notice them, but this is the only town in the country where the MPs have to wear rubber gloves so they can go around and push the privates' eyes back in.
Good evening, friends. This is your host to welcome you through the creaking door into the inner sanctum. Slither in, won't you? This is the story of Willie Harper and the devil.
There we go, and then it's off to bed for the night after that. Try to get to sleep after you listen to Inner Sanctum. It's not going to be easy as a kid.
No, not at all.
How do you like that? So within those, the frame there of what we've listened to, adventure stories with the Green Hornet and the Lone Ranger, comedy with Abbott Costello, some little science fiction or paranormal, if you will, with the Shadow and the Inner Sanctum. You've got comedy with Edgar Bergen and ventriloquism, and W.C. Fields and Bob Hope. Think of the stars that were on the radio, and again, this was the TV, if you want to say that also, of the day. They went on the radio and gave it their all, and I think that they left still a mark to this day that you can listen to some of these shows and still get a kick out of them. But I think they're good examples of, I don't think you're going to get the biggest stars in radio and in television and movies today doing a radio show today, but they might guest it on a radio show. Right. They might appear. They certainly do on Howard Stern show. He's been on for a long time. He's been very successful, and he's the only one on the radio right now that I see that is being creative in the way I'm talking about. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the sports shows or anything like that, but here he's being creative, trying to create different type of entertainment with his interviews, or he went back in the day, he did skits early on. So that's my postulation. I don't know if, Dave, you agree with me on that at all.
Well, I do to a certain extent. I kind of wish that there was an alternative, because today I'd like to be able to listen to more things just in my daily life because I'm not always in front of the TV. I don't always have an iPad or a computer screen in front of me. So whether I'm driving or whether I'm running or exercising, I wish there really was more variety in terms of, portable podcasts or whatever. That I can be entertained by. I'd love to listen to a comedian or some adventure show.
Right, and young comedians starting out,
they do anything to be on anything.
Yeah, you can't tell me that you tell a comedian that starting out that you're going to host your own show that's going to be on radio that. They're going to national radio across the nation that they're going to say, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And you may find some talent, and then all of a sudden you might find people saying, I want to go on that guy's show, and then it starts to snowball here and there. Again, it's not a replacement, but it is something I think that we could throw the idea out there that there are other things that can be done. It doesn't have to replace, or you're not going to sit here and not watch Walking Dead on Sunday nights, but there are podcasts available. You get in the car. You could also say if the show is really that good, you can sit around the radio with your family and listen to it for a half hour if you feel like it.
We'll get into it later, but there is some evidence of that starting to happen already, and we'd like to be part of that.
Thanks for the memory of sentimental verse, nothing in my purse, and chuckles when the preacher said,
Say, Charlie, why the arm in the sling?
Yeah, I walked straight into that busted street sign in front of Frank's Automat.
Well, you must have been really sore at him.
You said it, pal. I said, say, what's a big idea making a fella trip out there? I was going to sock him right in the kisser.
He's all wet. Why, you ought to sue him, Charlie.
I have half a mind to do just that. But where am I going to get that kind of dough?
Say, I know a fella just got me out of a big jam, and he didn't break the bank.
You don't say.
Yeah, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
The law office of Douglas Viviani?
That's right, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
Viviani.
That's what I said, Viviani.
He a straight shooter?
He's a cat's meow.
He's on the up and up?
Doug's ace is with me.
Is that so?
He's a bee's knees.
Well, that's just swell. You have his number?
You can call him at 631-681-1910 or email him at vivianilaw.com.
Wait, what was that last part?
What, email?
Yeah, what's email?
vivianilaw.com.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Father, that's not blood, it's rouge. I put it on to make my face rosy.
You'd better take it off, or that ain't going to be the only part of you that... I can't let her go out, Elliot. She's too young. She's only 10.
How old were you when you first went out?
Well, that's different. I was 11, but we lived in the hills of Tennessee, and you've got to start young down there.
How old was the girl?
She was 8, but she was a widow.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. That's Phil Harris, former band leader of Jack Benny. If you're familiar with him, he had a tremendous show that was in the 30s and 40s on the radio and continued in the 50s. And now this was sort of a spin-off, if you want to call it that, a Phil Harris show, which is also very successful. He later went on to do a bunch of Disney cartoons, including Jungle Book and Baloo. If you remember the voice Baloo of Jungle Book was Phil Harris. You listen to you like, hey, yeah, sure, whatever.
No, I do. I remember it. Phil Harris.
There you go. But I'm just trying
Mr. Harris, we used to call him.
That's right, exactly.
Phil, if you knew him really well.
I knew as Phil, correct. I'm looking now at the silver age of radio from the 50s to the 80s, I'm going to say. And if you came home from school and finished your homework, you may want to take a listen to maybe the rest of the lineup for these next 4 shows.
Are we still in the 50s?
Yes, 50s, in the 50s now.
From the far horizons of the unknown come tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million could-be years on 1,000 maybe world. The National Broadcasting Company presents
X minus 1.
Bicycle, you mean to say you pedaled all the way out here on a bike?
Why, sure.
Over them hills?
Of course.
With your legs?
Hey, just a minute. What's wrong with my legs?
They look like they should be sticking out of a malted milk.
There's just one way to handle the killers and the spoilers, and that's with a U.S. Marshal and the smell of gun smoke.
Gunsmoke. The story of the violence that moved west with young America. The story of a man who moved with it. Matt Dillon, United States Marshal.
There you go. That's Russ Hodges' call, the 1951 shot heard round the world. Before that, we heard Gunsmoke, a show that was on till 1961 on the radio. Jack Benny before that, 32 to 55, and that was Phil Harris interacting with Jack Benny. We spoke about him. And a show that I would have listened to for sure, X-1. In the late 50s. That would have been great. Sci-fi.
Sounds like my math class. What was it about?
There was every week was a different story about sci-fi. It's an anthology, almost like a Twilight Zone, but just about science fiction.
I see.
You're going to different planets and things, and they had some great writing back then, some great entertainment. Of course, listen to baseball. Even now, you certainly can listen to baseball on the radio. I think it's the best sport to listen to on the radio. It's a lot of fun to just sit around the pool and put a ball game on. You can follow it just as much as watching a game, if not better. Depending upon the announcers, I think that's some fun there. There's some interaction between the listener and the and the show. Now, I could tell you that my grandparents and parents would say that they would basically sit around, during dinner they would listen to one of these shows, and then after dinner, you'd do your homework and come down, and everyone would sit in the living room watching this radio that didn't move.
So they would just look. How did it work? Did they just stare at the box?
They actually usually found something to do. Mom would not to be sexist, but would kind of knit or do something homey. The kids would color or do puzzles, depending upon the age, or draw pictures and write letters. Dad would read the paper, read the sports page.
So today, with my son looking at his iPhone while he's watching TV at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. You could do two things at once. That's the beauty of radio too. Is you could just listen and do whatever you want, and still pay attention and enjoy some input instead of having to constantly push a button on the phone and all of this. Just saying. Then it was in the 60s we had my buddy Gene Shepard, a master storyteller you'd listen to.
And he'd be down in the basement. Where's my hammer, for crying out loud? And then my mother would say, well, where did you put it last? What do you mean, where did I put it last? It's not here. She'd say, now just think, where is it supposed to be? What do you mean? Where's my hammer? It's not here. Would you please look back of the coal bin on the wall where you put the nails in where you hang it? That's where it's supposed to be, stupid. Oh, what did that kid use that tar paper? Gene, did you take that roll of tar paper that I had under the door bench? And then, of course, I get sick. Terrible. Of course I took the tar paper. The tar paper is out in the cave back of Flick's house.
That's Gene Shepard. Again, some of this you can't get a real feel for, because he would sit down on Sunday nights, and when I would listen to him in the mid to late 70s, and he did this in the 60s as well, and he would just be, they called him a raconteur. He would sit for an hour and basically tell you stories or comment upon pop culture and life in general, and he always had a nice spin on it. He did Christmas Story, wrote that movie, and if you listen to his narration, that's a little piece of him, and this was a little story about his dad, searching in the house for tools.
Flick was in A Christmas Story also,
Flick
right?
was his buddy, was Gene Shepard, the character. Gene Shepard as a kid's buddy, and of course that's, as a kid you steal something from your dad on his workbench, and dad's looking for it and can't find it. If you take some time, we can't listen to it now, but listen to him present to you. You can go on the internet and find it. A story. Just start listening to one of his shows. You will listen for 45 minutes. You cannot stop listening. He paints the word picture better than anyone that I've ever listened to. And I hate to say, but I've listened to all these. I'm a nut for listening to all this old stuff.
You listened to him when you were younger,
and I listened to him growing up. There's no doubt. No doubt, he definitely formed some of my my thoughts in terms of comedy, telling stories. Certainly, I don't think I'm anywhere near and didn't develop the skill that he had, but I aspired to that. It was just something that I thought was a fun gift. Just like this other show that I used to listen to all the time, Radio Mystery Theater, started in the 70s, 74.
Come in. Welcome. It is said that opportunity is like a knife. It can serve or sever our hopes, depending on whether it is seized by the blade or the handle. The knife, mankind's first invention and symbol of our dual nature. The assassin uses it to kill, the surgeon to cure. The same edge, the same point, the same steel.
Listen to the poetry, the way they present that introduction to a 1 hour, or really 45-minute show called Radio Mystery Theater that started in 74, went to 82. Same producer and director, Hyman Brown, that did Inner Sanctum. If you remember, we did a clip from there, and you may have heard the opening of the door.
Right.
And he did that with this show. And E.G. Marshall was the host. You may know him from a lot of movies, including being the dad on Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase. And he was also in 12 Angry Men and so forth. Just long story short on this is that this is, to me, the epitome between Bob and Ray in the 70s, between Gene Shepard, Radio Mystery Theater. They kind of perfected this art, and then it went away. Basically in the 80s, that was kind of the end of radio plays and entertainment as we know it in the radio, as we've been discussing. I just wanted to take a moment and a nod and thank all these people for the memories.
Thanks for the memory of Schubert's Serenade, little things of jade, and traffic jams and anagrams and bills we never paid.
How lovely it was.
There we are, Bob Hope with his famous song. Just wondering at this point where we're going to go with this. I think we can then now in the next part of the show try to introduce what Dave and I think would be a good idea to just roll some ideas around, see if there's any new, different kind of program there can be, what we would do. What do you think, Dave?
There's plenty of opportunity. We were talking about, wouldn't it be great just to have like a Hulu or a Netflix that just offered entertainment that you listen to, that you don't necessarily have to watch, and there could be all kinds of content created for that, and I think there will be. I really do. I think it's just a wide open market right now.
I think you had said previously at the bar when we were having lunch, not drinks,
Cokes.
but having lunch,
Diet
right?
Cokes.
In the airport here, that we were talking about. The rather empty airport here. I don't know why it's so empty all the time at MacArthur. But anyway, we were saying how the content, or I should say the subscriptions to cable TV are on the way down. Because people, you were saying, Dave, what? People can get this on their, different methods.
They don't need to pay $100 a month to get cable anymore. If there are a few shows that you like to watch, you just get them off of Netflix or Hulu or
Plus, I think,
or the networks even. Like you like a show on Fox, just go to Fox.com.
But I also think the younger generations, people in 20s, 30s, they're not sitting down and watching TV for 4 hours and just hanging out and doing nothing else.
That's right.
They're now next generation, they want input. That's why baseball's having some struggles. They want input. They don't want to just sit and hang out. I don't blame them. They want to
have a choice.
And this could be something that they do, at the same time as something else. They could listen
Playing
to
a video game on their phone. They could be listening to a show. Absolutely.
How lovely it was.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
We are back, and we are going to now explore the future of radio, or at least some prepositions that I have and David has with regard to what can be done with radio, what doors I think are closed that should at least be opened or considered to bring back some more fun to radio. And one of the things is not really fun, but is the immediacy of radio, that the fact that you could send inexpensively someone out and about with the technology we have now to events. I don't care if it's to a concert. I don't care if it's to a news-worthy event, or just an airport and explain why there's nobody in the airport. I'm just saying, if you're creative enough, you can come up with some interesting ideas to be on the spot and hear things. The immediacy of radio can't be replaced.
President Roosevelt said in a statement today that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from the air.
Ladies and gentlemen, a special announcement. Citizen volunteers are asked to go quietly to their nearest police or fire stations and offer their services if they wish to help.
Go ahead, Honolulu.
Several planes have been shot down, and anti-aircraft gunnery is very heavy.
And of course, that was the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941. But what I'm trying to point out is radio was right there, just like TV is now, but radio still shouldn't give up. Radio was right there and the source of all news. back in the day, you heard reports from Hawaii right then and there. Certainly can be done on the radio now. That's really not. Everything, the news is a recycle. Somebody's heard the news and reading off a teletype, and no one's actually out in the field, is what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Well, locally they are, right? Like if you listen to a local, we're in New York, local news radio, they usually have a reporter down in the field, but no, not on some national news level. No,
right, and there is a good opportunity there to send somebody out, just like the newspapers do. Go find a story. Here's a microphone. Go for it, and or to be immediate and be right there. Radio can be used for that. Also, not getting political, but politics. I should say politicians and our elected officials, a better way to say it, can use radio better. There's no doubt. FDR did this like nobody else.
My friend, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it was done and what the next steps are going to be. And I know that when you understand what we in Washington have been about, I shall continue to have your cooperation as fully as I have had your sympathy and your help during the past week.
Now, that was during the Depression, a fireside chat, the first of many that FDR did. I don't know what time it was. It was in the evenings, maybe 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. He came on the radio, and in that particular fireside chat, he sat down and explained to the general public banking. How does banking work, and why did it fail? And by the way, what did we do as a government to solve that problem? Not what are we going to do, not promises, not speeches, not propaganda. He sat down and explained, whether you agree with it or not, it's a different story, but he went down and explained to you what was being done. Not what was going to be, what was being done, and first of all, what's the problem? Let's lay it out honestly. I don't want to get into politics, but there's a lot of puffing, and there's on both sides of the fence right now. There's a lot of discussion of pointing fingers, and there's a lot of, we'll do this, we should do that. There's never someone that's sitting down in a significant way on a weekly basis telling the general public, ear to ear or voice to ear, I want to tell you exactly what we did and what does this mean and what does that mean. We hear people talking about the politicians on both sides in radio, and that's fine. It's well done. But how about hearing from our president and senators and so forth themselves straight on?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
It does. Listen to the way he just laid. If you listen to that, pull it up on Google. It's amazing. He taught a class on banking, and it was just it really set the tone for the country to believe what he has to say, or at least listen to what he has to say and try to learn. And he told what he believed and what is the truth about banking. He didn't make a game of it and try to, not answer questions and so forth. He went straight out, listened to it, because he said, listen, when you hear what I have to say, you're going to agree with me. He's that confident. We don't have that anymore, and radio helped that happen. On the other hand,
Still haven't been able to figure that out yet.
Well, it's whether you want the butter on here. I'll show you. You see, this would be the near side.
Which side?
This one.
Well, why is that any different than the other side?
It's nearer to me. Then on the other side would be the far side. Now, if you butter on the far side, it would be different than buttering it on the near side.
But holding it that way, you'd be buttering your fingers, wouldn't you, if you buttered on the far side?
I would be buttering my fingers, but I just buttered the toast.
Let me see you butter the far side of that piece of toast.
Just like that. There's no problem.
Now look at your hand. See your left hand covered with butter.
Oh, it's the toast.
Oh, I don't think that's the way to do it at all.
300 slices coming up.
Right. And butter them on the near side.
Just, I don't know if you get all that again. It's Bob and Ray. It's hard to condense. They had a House of Toast. It was a fictitious cereal. And they go ahead and get involved with trying to compete with McDonald's and so forth. They had butter and buttering on the feeder side versus the far side on a piece of toast. The subtlety of it is funny.
Very cerebral.
Very cerebral, but very funny if you listen to the whole thing again. This is not the kind of humor that you can listen to in sound bites,
right.
But I try. Right. But my point is that that they were on the air from 46 to 87, like 40 years. And whether you heard of them or not, the point being that they were able to bring new entertainment content that they never really went on TV. They did a Broadway show. They never did movies. They enjoyed and elevated the medium of the radio. And I think, a new comedian in this day and age, let's just say, or comedians can have a show if they sat down if radio would allow it, and could be very interesting to sit down and hear some comedians develop their talent on the radio, and maybe do something like a Bob Hope show or a skit show like Bob and Ray, like a Saturday Night Live on the radio. Just saying. Any ideas, Dave? Or?
Well, so what has to happen for this like evolution?
People have to listen to Everything Old is New Again.
Well, that's a start.
And at least consider that, wait a minute, there is something different out there. I don't mean to, blow my own horn and your own horn, so to speak, or ours, how are we going to say that? But we are trying to do a little something different, to bring something fun to the radio.
Right.
That radio is fun, but there's room for more. And I don't mean to be facetious, but there need to be maybe some more shows like this, or people to get involved in a radio, on the radio station side, and say let's expand the programming a little bit here. The talk radio, they're always talking about how there's problems now with talk radio here and there. Yeah, because how many times can I hear Al from Flushing talk about the Mets? They need to score more runs than the Dodgers. I mean, at some point, I don't mean to put it down. It's just kind of trying to be funny, but there's more to it. That's great discussion, but there's more that we can do.
Yeah, I think things are starting to change very slowly. I'm not a huge NPR fan, but I do listen, and they actually have some shows like you were talking about. They have a weekly, pretty humorous quiz show on the news called Wait, Don't Tell Me. You don't have to listen when it's on. You can download the podcast. And also very popular recently was this show called Serial. That was produced by NPR about a murder of a teenage girl about 10 years ago, and a reporter who's following the story. And there's 12 episodes, and you listen each week. Now you can obviously download them, but it was a continuing investigative story. And at least on social media, Serial became really hot, and a lot of people listen to it. And it kind of gets to exactly what you're saying, which is it's an alternative. It's not talk radio. It's not sports. It's not politics. It would be great, again, just to have a platform like a Hulu or something like that, where you can go in and just pick the kind of show, the kind of content programming that you want to hear in your personal time. There's a lot of opportunity there to do it.
And also, to get well known, you do want to do a national show, or you want to try to get national so that your show is on national. And then, by the way, say, hey, you know what? We have a podcast at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. You can listen to our old shows at any time you want.
Right.
So it's appointment radio, and or listen to it when you like.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that. And it's got to be cool. Like with the younger people, it needs to be cool. Like, hey, did you hear that Saturday Night Live show that was on the radio last night? Or, tune it in on the bus on the way home at 17, 16 years old.
It's all copycat stuff, right? All you need is one show to be successful, and suddenly you're going to get followers.
Absolutely,
to do the same thing.
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I think that hopefully we get the ball rolling a little bit. I'd love to see other stations do that. I'd love to hear what you have to say, the audience. Are we right or wrong? You're certainly listening to the radio. Old, new, again at AOL.com. Let us know what you think.
Time. Pleasant dreams.
Okay, and we're back, and just wanted to do a little recap of what we've talked about for the last two shows. And Dave kind of put it well, that you need to have a little bit of a groundswell. You need to have some people consider ideas of interest, and I think it is. I think people are looking to do two things at once. You can listen to the radio and garden, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
And I'd rather listen to something interesting than and something that you find of a fun nature than to have to just put a song on.
Even like a book on tape now. I mean, if the book is well written and the narration is done really well, I mean, it really sucks you in.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. And the theater of the mind, it's not going away. We just have forgotten how to do it. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.